Hey, everybody. Well, Todd Conklin here. Thanks for being on the show. I've got a special guest today, Kim Gourley. He is a partner at Jones Williams Furman Gourley in Boise, Idaho. Full disclosure, he is also our attorney. He specializes in commercial litigation and commercial transaction law. I've asked him here today to have a quick conversation with us about what's going on with we're probably going to focus a little bit more on commercial or investment at the very least transactions, with everything that's going on with lending and with social distancing and title companies requiring that we do closings differently, and of course not having the federal legislature pass yet the ability to have digital signatures for notary. But now it sounds like we've got some counties and some state governments that are saying that they're going to produce some workarounds. Anyway, lots and lots of questions about the viability of contracts that are currently pending, what can be done if there are some quarantine issues, all of these things that go along with it. So I've asked a legal professional to come and have a quick chat with us. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you.
So I know we got a bunch of questions. I think I'll just start and just sort of see where this all leads us. If one of our agents was working with a commercial property owner and they were interested in potentially selling their property, would now be that time to be looking at listing, marketing, and selling the property?
Well, it's a very good question, Todd. I think a large part of it just depends on how the owners and the brokers and agents feel the market is right now. There's nothing about the shelter orders that have been entered by the governors, to my knowledge, that restrict the purchase and sale of commercial properties, multifamily properties, residential properties. And so there's nothing that is prohibiting these things from proceeding forward. It's more a function of whether the seller or the buyer thinks the market will change, and this is a good time or a bad time to be proceeding. As far as closings are occurring, that seems to be going on without too much of an issue. At least here in Idaho, the title companies are proceeding forward with closings. We're doing everything electronically that can be done, but that's actually been the case for some period of time now. Idaho is still requiring that all the original deeds be in the possession of the title company when it's recording, but other than that, electronic signatures are working.
Great. So, excuse me, if I'm a property owner, nothing in what's going on to preclude me from listing, marketing, and then obviously selling my property. If I do decide that I'm going to list my property, is there anything specific that I should make sure to look out for? Is there anything I should be worried about? Is there any language that I should be including in my marketing agreement to make sure that I'm covered?
Well, I don't know about the listing agreements. As an owner or a buyer, I think there are certain concerns about what should actually be put in the real estate purchase and sale agreements. We can talk about that when it works for you within sort of your timeline and your agenda on this, but those are force majeure clauses, which some people nowadays would refer to as the coronavirus clauses. But as far as the listing agreement, I don't think that you need a force majeure clause in there because you're able to list the property electronically and proceed with what is occurring. And so I wouldn't anticipate problems there, or at least none have been brought to my attention so far in that area.
Okay, great. That's perfect. So no issue with listing, nothing special that I need to have in the marketing agreement. So let's go ahead then and let's talk about, all right, now I get an offer on my property. I guess we can look at it from the seller's side first if you want, and just have a quick conversation about what we should be worried about and looking after.
Well, the key clause is what we refer to legally as the force majeure clauses, which are commonly referred to as acts of God, government restriction type clauses that say what occurs if any of these events happen, and as either party entitled to not perform or would not be deemed in breach if they fail to perform. Those clauses are very common in commercial leases, You'll see them all the time. Usually they provide that the tenants still have to pay rent even if a force majeure event occurs. It is not common that you see those type of clauses in real estate purchase and sale agreements. And so then the question is, with what has occurred, is that something somebody wants? As a seller, I see a potential issue with force majeure clauses of, you don't want your property tied up too long if a buyer has agreed to close, hypothetically 90 days or 120 days or 60 days, whatever is occurring, and if there's a force majeure clause in there, suddenly is there some sort of extension of time that the law creates, and the seller suddenly finds that they're tied into one particular buyer for a longer period than they intended. In the meantime, other potential buyers are going by the wayside. On the other hand, if you're representing a buyer may want that type of clause, especially if the buyer is attempting to do a 1031 exchange, which is very common in the commercial side of real estate transactions. And so the buyer is going to identify the 3 properties within a 45-day period, needs to close on one within 180 days, but through this process with the shelter orders, is that making it sort of impractical to complete a 1031 exchange potentially. And so a buyer enters into a purchase and sale agreement and then suddenly finds that they can't complete the 1031 exchange that they were intending to complete. And so it depends which party you're representing as to what their motivations are. But I am going to guess that we are going to see more of these force majeure clauses come into these real estate agreements simply because of what's going on with the coronavirus.
Wonderful. Well, Kim Gourley, partner at Jones, Williams, Furman Gourley in Boise, Idaho. Again, buddy, I appreciate your time and hope that helps everybody.